wait, then you better have a stack of these for me?
No, I just meant to guess, but you can have them. Yeah. So, going to prison is like dying with your eyes open. That's a quote from Bernard Carrick, someone who's gone to prison. So my main point today is that America has held on to its archaic, cruel prison system for too long in the face of data about its ineffectiveness. And to convince you of that, I'm going to break my speech into 3 parts. What exactly is wrong with the system, some solutions and why these are solutions, and what we as a large society can expect if we implement these solutions. So first, let's go over what exactly is wrong with it. As many of you probably know, America is the most incarcerated country in the world. But what you probably don't know is how much we spend on this system and what sort of results we get from it in terms of recidivism rate. I think recidivism rate is the best measure of its effectiveness because it tracks how well we can reform prisoners, which is what we all want. So let's go over how much it costs. This is a graph from the Hamilton Project. It shows a 30-year interval from 1980 to 2010. And as you can see in inflation-adjusted dollars, our spending has gone up 350% in that time. That's quite a big rise. In 2010, it was at $80 billion, which is a pretty large portion of the federal budget. It's not the biggest, but perhaps more importantly, is what sort of results do we get out of it in terms of recidivism rate? Well, a study from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which was done in 2005, it tracked over 400,000 prisoners after their release and found that over 3/4 of them had been rearrested within 5 years. That's really dismal compared to the rest of the world, and it should really cause us to question whether our system is having the desired effect of reforming these people. I think the popular notion is that the harsher the prisons, the more likely people will be deterred from wanting to return. But actually, a study by the same bureau found that people who were placed in higher security levels were actually more likely to return. And why exactly that is, I'll go into more later, but just for now, just sort of think about that and how that goes with popular notions. Now that I've gone over what's wrong with it, what are some ways we can fix it? Well, 2 countries I would like to focus on are Norway and Sweden. And what these countries have in common is that they focus on rehabilitating their prisoners and re-educating them, rather than just punishing them for the crimes they've committed. I think the best way to show you this is just to show you the difference in what they look like, foreign prisons versus our prisons. So on the left you have Halden Prison in Norway, and on the right is a Supermax prison in Colorado. You can see the prison in Norway, it really almost looks like a college dorm. There's natural light, there's bedding, there's neutral colors, so on and so forth. But in Colorado, it really has none of those things. There's stone walls, there's a tiny little window which lets in very little natural light. There's a concrete slab for a bed, which even with a bedroll is not very comfortable. And these aren't the only differences. The list goes on and on. The prison in Norway has such things as a gymnasium, a rec room, a prayer space, and the philosophy behind these differences is really quite simple. That if you allow people, even dangerous people, to feel like humans, they'll behave more civilly than treated like forces of evil. And that's within the prison and without. So the difference here should not really be viewed as being tough on crime versus being soft on crime. It's more about how they look at the prisoners. They see them as people with psychological needs that can be reformed and re-educated to enter society as productive members. I think we sort of just see them as people who need to be punished for what they've done. And we've really seen that that doesn't work, so why are we sticking with it? And I'd like you to think about if, after spending years or even decades in an American-style prison without the basic comforts in a cramped cell with very little natural light for up to 23 hours a day without human contact, if that person would be more likely to re-enter society or grow to detest this very cruel system that has almost dehumanized them. I think it's really the second option that's more likely. And I think the statistics really back that up. So now that we've gone over some solutions, let's move on to thinking about if we were to implement these solutions, how would they affect larger society? So of course there would be some initial investment required to redesign the prisons and fund these re-education programs that I've been talking about. But this initial investment would quite soon pay off, as the recidivism rate could be expected to drop, and the crime rate would be expected to drop. One thing I didn't go over, but in Sweden, according to a report by The Guardian, their recidivism rate is 40%. That's about 35% lower than ours. They have 1 in 2,000 people in prison, which reflects a lower crime rate. So we can see their system has really worked for them, and we should probably think about implementing it. But also, if we were to make these changes, the very high security measures would become obsolete, because they're not only the most humanizing, but they are also the most costly. One supermax prison in Illinois estimates a yearly cost per inmate to be about $62,000 per year. That's more than a private education. That's more than a college education at most private universities. So I think that's kind of ridiculous. But after time, after these reforms that take effect, we can expect to see a drop in recidivism rate, yearly spending on prisons, overall crime rate, like we've seen in these foreign countries. So I'd kind of like you to imagine a world where we spend less on prison and are safer for it. I know that sounds optimistic, but other countries have shown it's entirely possible. And that's really the world I would want to live in, and I would want my children to live in. So, I've given you a lot of information today, but I hope the main points you take away are that we don't have to be satisfied with this current system that is costing us such a staggering amount of money, producing such dismal results. So I would, now that you've seen how much is at stake, I would call upon each of you to make this issue heard. And the things I would suggest doing are contacting your representatives, participating in civil protest, and supporting organizations such as the Reform Alliance, which was recently founded by Meek Mill and Jay-Z with the aim of reforming prisons. So I'll just close with a quote: "A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's written by MLK in Birmingham jail.